answer.
You did it.
And it is now. You do this, did you? No.
I leave a mouth organ up there. No, I didn't.
I wouldn't half on it.
He's there lurking in the background.
Yeah, as usual.
We have a lovely story. Well, I assume it's a lovely story. It usually is. Well, there you go. Thank you.
It's interesting the choices you make about stories, how they get a hold of you. I've never been to Armenia, don't know that much about it, but I know it's kind of troubled history. And I happened to pick up a book on someone else's bookcase and found this story. It's a really old folk tale. I've played around with a bit with it, and it goes something like this. Once there was and was not a man who set off to make a better life for himself. He had worked hard and saved some money, but he found himself stranded in Marseille. He managed to get away from Armenia across Turkey, and here he was in Marseille waiting. He'd heard about America. Friends had written and said how wonderful it was, and so he wanted to go to America. And they said, yes, come, we'll send you money. You just get as close as you can. Well, he got to Marseille and waited. He wrote letters. No money came back. He was wearing through the money that he had in his pockets. He stayed in the cheapest of inns. And when he ran out of money or he couldn't pay his bills soon enough, he was thrown out and he'd find somewhere else. But you know, the way it happens in small towns like Marseille in those days, the innkeepers often got together and said, what about this chap? Did he pay the bill at your place? And they said, no. And they said, he's costing us a fortune. The best thing we could do is club together and buy him a ticket and send him back where he came from. Well, it was agreed. And, you know, they had such hopes because here was a chap who said he was going to America. He must be rich then. He was going to go to America. Little did they know that he was begging money from friends. So the next tramp steamer that came past, he got a cabin on board and he was happy to get it, except once he got inside, there was lice on him and in the bed, and it chugged slowly, and he was beside the engine room. Eventually, I don't know how the time passed, he probably sang to himself. Eventually, he got back to his native soil, a bit depressed really. He spent a lot of time scratching, didn't get any answers. And, you know, when he got feet on the ground, he still was miles and miles away from his home. But he thought, oh well, I wondered what he could do. Maybe there was something he could do. What he had in his pocket was just a couple of coins, 4 para. So, well, I can't get a new pair of shoes with 4 para. Can't even get a hat to wear. And I can't. What am I going to do with 4 para? Oh, well, he thought, I could have a bath. I could go to the hammam. It's very cheap here. So that's what he did. He decided he'd go and have a bath, you know, see how things went. Have a bath, things will change. Well, he went into the hammam and he paid his 4 para at the door and went in and sort of eventually found a place where he was going to undress, and he got the towel around him. He was given a towel at the door, that was all he wore, and he went back into the corridor and then went, it was a big old stone place, no signs, and there were a couple of attendants further down the corridor. Should he go that way or that way or that way or maybe that way? In the end he went up to the attendants and asked them, which way is the bath? And they just took a deep breath and looked the other way. Perhaps he smelled. But he went and looked at them, but they still ignored him, and then they looked this way. So he just ducked in past them and went down the corridor where they stood. And And when he went into the room that was there was a man there. Obviously a rich man, for he was wearing beautiful silken robes of red and green and blue. And he sat on a great cushion over by the window. And our friend, the Armenian, he apologized profusely, but the man said nothing. He just sat very still. He seemed to be praying. But the man went forward to ask. He thought he'd ask him how to get to the bath. But when he went forward, he was taken aback. When he looked at the man, he couldn't believe his eyes. He looked in the mirror behind him and then there, looked at himself. This stranger looked exactly like him. Same nose, same hair, same chin, same height perhaps. Couldn't believe it. He couldn't help himself. He reached out to touch the man and the man just keeled over. He was dead. Stone dead. The Armenian didn't know what to do. How could he? What? And then he went, just a minute. He's dead. I'm alive. So he decided there and then that nobody else was around. He would wear his clothes, take on his belongings. So he very quickly stripped the body, swapped the towel wrapped around the dead man, laid him along on the couch where he was, and he came out, all dressed up, out of the corridor again, and here were the two attendants. Well, different story. When they saw the robes, they fell upon him and said, "Oh, Pasha, Pasha, let us attend to you. Let us give you the best of baths." And he nodded, said nothing, and they led him to a fine chamber, a private bath. They poured water over it. The clothes were hung up neatly first, of course. And they said nothing. They gave him the best rub down he had ever had, said nothing about the lice or the dirt and scum that came off his body. For those of you who had one of these baths, you know you shed skin copiously with that sort of bath. Well, he felt so invigorated, and they dried him and rubbed him with oils, and then they dried him again, and then they put the clothes back on him. Oh, I felt like a new man. But he didn't say anything. He kept very quiet, just in case. And it was then that he reached into his pockets and he found money, coin. And he looked, gold coins. So he gave 5 gold coins to this attendant, 5 gold coins to this attendant, and started to wait for the door. Just then, the bath keeper came in and said, "Oh, Pasha, the man is here with your horse. He awaits you at the entrance." "Oh, thank you very much," said the Armenian in a very polite voice. Here's some 5 pair for your trouble. Here's some gold coins. And, oh, by the way, I came upon a poor soul, dead, in one of your rooms. Here's the rest of this money," and he counted it out, 60 gold coins. "Make sure that a priest comes and says a prayer over him, that there's a stone raised over his grave, and have him buried with all due honour and respect." Certainly, certainly, said the bath keeper, keen to have any sort of trouble covered over really quickly. Well, by this time, our Armenian was beginning to get the hang of this. He was a pasha, Turkish. There was a horse waiting outside for him. There was a servant holding the horse. Well, that servant would know how to get home, so he didn't have to say much at all. So he went forward, and the servant was holding a beautiful red-brown horse. Held it by the mane, and he helped his master, let me help you up, helped him onto the horse. And because this horse was kind of feisty, held on to the mane and led the horse through the streets. And as they drew into the more Turkish area of town, where the buildings were all sumptuous and had great balconies and beautiful lanterns hanging outside, the servant said, "Master, would you like to go to the men's quarters or the women's quarters of the house?" And he thought, "The women's quarters, please." was wondering about this, and then he began to wonder, if I go to the women's quarters, I wonder if I've got a wife. Do I have children? What is going to happen here? Oh dear, I don't want to be... So just to distract the servant, once they got to the house, the Armenian tripped and hurt his ankle and said, please, just take me to the women's quarters. I must rest, I must lie down. So he was taken to the women's quarters, and it was beautiful. Oh, the glass was all coloured all the way along the one wall, and the sunshine shone in. And the cushions were all silken and laid against the wall. And here and there, a great chair. The fountains played outside. Oh, it's beautiful. And as he sat down in the great chair and put his leg up, all of a sudden, a curtain pushed back, and the most beautiful woman, dressed sumptuously. Oh, she was so gorgeous. You just have to imagine it yourself. She came racing in and said, oh, husband, I heard you have hurt yourself. Oh, come, let me have a look, let me foot. And she bent down in front of him, and he said nothing. And she said, oh, and then stopped and drew back from him and said, if you are my husband, you will go to the king tomorrow, and then we shall see. And she stood up then and walked off. Oh, thought the Armenian, I'm a servant of the king. I will go to the king tomorrow. And so that's what happened. The next morning, it was all arranged. The servants came to take him. The horse was there. And he thought, I don't know how I'll play this, but what have I got to lose? Here we go. And as he got to the palace, he said to his servant, oh, I need you to help me, to take me to the king's chamber. My ankle and foot are still troubling me. So the servant tied up the horse, helped his master down, took him upstairs, and hobbled and took him right there to the room that was the king's private chamber. The Armenian took a deep breath, pushed open the door, and went in and bowed deeply. And as he was bowing, he heard a voice say, here you are, Pasha. Here's the man that makes me laugh. And the Armenian thought, I'm supposed to entertain the king. I'm the jester. Oh, and he said, oh yes, your majesty. I am here to entertain you with a story. And he told the story of what had happened to him in the bathhouse with the dead man at the burial. And the king listened to this story and said, when it was finished, he said, that's some story. What? Not a bit of truth. It's not true, is it? I mean, I can't believe that, said the king. But it's a good story. I mean, I'm glad you told me it. Actually, said the Armenian, it is all true, for I am that man. That can't be. How could that be? Well, it is true. You can find out. He quizzed him, this and that, and then he sent him off. Had him locked up in a room. Then he summoned servants to bring the bathkeeper to that chamber. When the bathkeeper came, and the king said, did you by any chance be given money? 60 gold pieces for a man who died and had... Oh, yes! Yeah, tragic, said the bathkeeper, worried about his reputation. But we buried him quickly, and he paid for it all. The Pasha paid for it all. And it's all taken care of. The priest said the service, and he's buried in a graveyard not far from here. Well, the king had to have the body back up again, didn't he? Because he wanted to know, what did he die by, fall or fear? What, natural causes, we hope? Well, meanwhile, the Pasha was locked in the room, and it took some time for... There were many skilled people, men, who could work on bodies and things like that. And it was talked to the king that, as far as they could see, he had died of natural causes. The Armenian was called forward, out of the room. And the king said to him, well, you spoke the truth. He died of natural causes, and you are a lucky man. So lucky that why would I stand in your way? You may have the job of being my jester. You can have the house, the horse, and everything in the household, and good luck to you. And so it was that the Armenian became a pasha in that Turkish part of the city, and he entertained the king. And as for the wife, I'd like you to think about, how did she handle it? How did she take to this change that she found out about? I don't know. I like to think it caused a bit of a ruckus. Thank you.